Hi Tim, thank you so much for covering my class. I just wanted to give you a quick instructions on what they need to cover today in class. I added you to the D2L course as an instructor. It's labeled EDFN 330.0. And on the home page when class starts, if you could direct them to go to the content link, you'll see on the home page, just click on the content link. When you go to the content link, I tried to make everything self-explanatory under week 2. So if you click over here on week 2, you'll see week 2 listed on the right. The first thing they'll need to do is, if you could have them open up week 2 overview. It is a bring your own device lab, so everybody should have a device with them. So week 2 overview, and you can put this on the screen at the front of the room. It'll have the objectives listed, and then there are 2 in-class activities that they need to complete. The first one is where they're going to explore creating learning goals. So our textbook calls it communicating learning targets. Really the whole overview of the course when we're looking at assessment is to make sure that students talk about intentional teaching and learning. So starting with a clear learning goal, designing instruction that aligns to their own stated learning goal, and finding ways. Our assessment is all about formative assessment, which is checking in with students throughout the learning process to gauge where they're struggling, what they need extra help with. So really is instruction for learning, or assessment for learning. I don't talk anything about high-stake testing, and we only talk about summative assessment as a way to gauge what students have accomplished and how we can use that information from the summative assessment as another formative assessment on looking at tailoring it to meet students' needs going forward. So in the first activity, the first thing they want to do is learn how to write learning targets or learning objectives. Now the best thing I've done for this example, they're going to start with just a little overview of formative assessment, but here's really the meat of the lesson. So it is a cute little video on how to write measurable learning objectives. You know, it is very formulaic, but it gets to all of the important features of a good, clear learning objective. And I talk to students about they're part of a profession, and a profession has some professional language and standards of ways that we communicate with one another. So learning to write clear, measurable learning objectives is part of our profession. So this video, I highly recommend that you show it in the front of class and even maybe show it once or twice, maybe even more than once. Strategy 2 in the book talks about using examples of strong and weak work. So I take a learning objective from today's class and I show it as both a strong example and a weak example aligned to the video. So in my example, I look at the condition, the actor, the behavior, and the degree, and then that's a strong example, and then we can diagnose the weak examples. So this part of the lesson you may hate, it's super formulaic, but it's a nice way to teach students who know nothing about learning objectives how to write them in a professional manner. The next thing, I wanted students to be able to practice. So I want them up out of their seats. We have plenty of whiteboard markers in the closet in 211. So give them a whiteboard marker and they're going to write on the board or on the wall. So the wall of the classroom, the white area, is painted in whiteboard paint, and so they can write directly on the wall. And ask them to write a learning objective for their discipline and to put it on the wall. Then if they sit down and just look at the different learning objectives that are now posted on the wall, have them then just choose randomly someone else's learning objective, and they're going to go ahead and go on the wall, and they're going to circle the condition, the actor, the behavior, and the degree. So they're going to assess their classmates' learning objectives. So this is a good way to talk about how to write learning objectives. Their homework, so I'm going to skip down to the bottom for part 2. Their homework is to create some learning objectives, so they really do need to know how to do it. The next thing I'm going to ask students to do in the in-class activity is a technology integration, and it is a course from Edutopia, so it's something that they can do independently. So if you look, what I want them to do is to go back out into the week 2 folder. So we're going to go up to the top, choose week 2, and the students are going to go to the in-class assignment. So if you look, there's an in-class assignment. If they read first, it will all make sense. So I tried to document it all here. So it has directions on exactly what students should be doing and all the resources they need. So if they read it carefully, they should be good to go. So you could either have them stay in the classroom and finish it up, or they can take it and finish this part of the class at home. I would recommend that they stay in the classroom because they've got so much work to do that if they don't use this hour and a half wisely to get this done, it just seems like their homework is overwhelming. So back to week 2, that is, I'm going to the overview, that is the second part of the in-class assignment, which is the technology integration. Now for their homework, it's simple. They should understand what they're to do. The first one is they're reading microblogs. They know how to do that for chapter 2. Actually, this should be for chapter 3. Let me change that real quick. So I'll go in and change that. And then they should have their formative assessment field project. Now this is, they've done it before, so it's pretty easy. In this week's field project, they're going to write clear and measurable learning objectives for a lesson they're teaching or their mentor is teaching. And they're going to, and that's all they need to do. So pretty simple for them to be able to do that. If you have any questions at all, Tim, I'll keep my phone on me, so feel free to give me a call on my cell phone. And I really thank you so much. Bye.